We are the most complex mammals on the planet. We walk upright, possess massive brains, and have shaped the entire physical world to suit our needs. This visualization maps the history of life on Earth. That tiny sliver at the end represents us, along with every animal alive today. The rest represents the 99% of all species that have ever existed and are now extinct. To see how we ended up in that surviving 1%, we have to rewind the clock 4 billion years. This generated footage shows early Earth as a toxic, boiling mass of lifeless rock. Moving from sterile magma to the modern human form required navigating a 4 billion-year gauntlet. Every trait you possess exists because an ancestor survived a planetary freeze, a volcanic apocalypse, or an apex predator. Our origin rests on chemical luck. Atoms joined in a precise sequence to create genetic material, which was then encased in a protective oily blob, the first cell. For 2 billion years, base cells simply cloned themselves. Eventually, two cells merged, combining their genes into an offspring with two parents. This introduced the genetic variation required for life to diversify. For millions of years, ocean life was blind. Surviving meant swimming through dark water and hoping you didn't bump into something hungry. When a handful of skin cells mutated to become sensitive to light, those specific creatures could finally distinguish shapes and shadows, giving them a massive advantage in dodging predators. As predators grew larger, the stakes increased. To process visual information and coordinate escape routes, nerve cells clustered together behind the eyes to form the very first brains. Simultaneously, the genetic code for jaws and teeth appeared, allowing our ancestors to transition from passive prey to active hunters. Even with these tools, we were frequently outmatched. Massive predators chased our ancestors out of the deep ocean and into stagnant, shallow swamps. The water here lacked oxygen, and carbon dioxide saturated our ancestors' blood. Over thousands of generations, our anatomy adapted to this lack of oxygen. Our ancestors evolved a specialized internal organ that could pull oxygen directly from the atmosphere, the first lung. We still carry the biological wiring from this ancient switch. The neural mechanism that once spasmed to close the windpipe while using gills remains in the modern human body. When that ancient circuit misfires today, you get the hiccups. Stepping onto land solved the swamp problem, but the sun's heat threatened to dry out our offspring. To survive away from the water, life evolved internal fertilization and tough-shelled eggs that sealed nutrients and moisture inside. Then, 250 million years ago, a massive plume of magma surged through the Earth's crust in Siberia, erupting for 500,000 years. Trillions of tons of carbon dioxide trapped heat in the atmosphere, driving temperatures over 100 degrees and killing 95% of all species. The dinosaurs emerged as the dominant survivors of this extinction. The massive scale and predatory jaw structure of this T-Rex skeleton illustrate the physical threat our ancestors faced. Early mammals were relegated to the bottom of the food chain. To survive, our ancestors shrank to the size of cats and became nocturnal. We developed insulating fur to maintain body temperature in the dark and evolved the neocortex, a brain structure dedicated to complex thought and analysis. Even in the dark, eggs were vulnerable. To protect our offspring, mammals evolved to give birth to live young. Instead of leaving them to fend for themselves, we used modified sweat glands, mammary glands, to provide milk, keeping our children hidden and fed. Living as nocturnal prey left a permanent reflex in our nervous system. Tiny muscles at the base of our hair once contracted to puff up our fur, trapping heat and making us appear larger to predators. When you are cold or startled today, your skin still triggers that vestigial response, creating goosebumps. 65 million years ago, an asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula at the site shown here. The resulting global catastrophe wiped out the dinosaurs, allowing the surviving mammals to inherit the forests and thrive on fruit. Eventually, the African and Arabian plates pulled apart to form the East African Rift Valley. This created a mountain chain that blocked ocean rains, causing the dense rainforests to shrink into the sparse, dry terrain seen in this photograph. With the trees receding, food was harder to reach. To travel across the open ground between pockets of forest, our ancestors were forced to leave the branches and take their first steps on two legs. Bipedalism required a narrower pelvis, making childbirth significantly more difficult. As a result, human babies had to be born early and helpless. This forced the development of the extended family unit, as infants required years of constant protection and feeding to survive. These stone hand axes reveal a shift in survival strategy. By chipping stones into razor-sharp edges, early humans could smash open bones to reach the fat-rich marrow inside, a high-energy food source inaccessible to other scavengers. Tool use led to the control of fire. This diagram shows the significant metabolic energy our ancestors once spent on heavy jaw muscles and digestion. Cooking softened meat. Notice the shift. As digestive energy decreases, that surplus is reallocated to fuel exponential brain growth. Managing the social complexity of family units and coordinated hunts required a new level of communication. Natural selection favored a lower larynx and a more flexible tongue, allowing us to form the words that eventually became human speech. 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens arrived. Armed with fire, speech, and a massive brain, like the one evidenced by this skull, we began to move out across every continent. Every human body is a patchwork quilt of desperate, ancient survival tactics. You breathe air because a swamp predator once cornered your ancestor. You have goosebumps because your ancestors had to hide from dinosaurs in the cold night. You walk upright because a shifting continent killed your rainforest home. And your wisdom teeth are shrinking because we learned to cook. Humanity did not conquer the planet through destiny. We are simply the luckiest, most adaptable survivors of the longest obstacle course in the history of the world.